Okay.
Will your presentation up?
I have you as presenter if you want to do it.
Okay, good enough. Everybody slide. Let's see if I can handle this one. Okay, everybody see the presentation right now?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. Well, my name is Randall White. I'm the program manager on N911 and NextGen, and thank you very much for joining us. This is really a big day because this is the kickoff for data remediation for Region Number 1, South Central, and we're really excited about this. This is a huge effort getting here, and it's going to be a huge effort getting through here, but it's a very crucial step in NG911. You'll hear more about that in a minute from Scott. So it's kind of what we want to cover today, and we'll try not to keep you all too long on it. We just want to give you a sense of where we are, what the next steps, we done, what are we going to be doing, and what do we need your help with. So that's kind of where we're going today. Scott's going to talk a little bit about why remediation is so important. To step you through the process that we're going to be following for the remediation, and that's kind of crucial. Let you know what are the next steps. Ken's going to share a really important document that his team has developed that's going to be actually very crucial to what we're doing with the remediation, and talk a little bit about that. He's going to give us an update of where we are in the analytical process, and we're going to get that information to you. And then probably one of the important things is, if questions, who do you call? This is a big project. We've got a lot of folks working on it, but fortunately they're great folks. And we're going to try to give you an idea who the best folks are for you to call if you have questions. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And, near the end, I'm going to review some action items. That's things coming up during the call, but more importantly, where do we need your help? So we'll kind of emphasize that, and then I'm going to invite Ken to do some comments to we'll adjourn for the day. So it's kind of where we're planning on going. And Scott, can you tell a little bit about remediation and why it's important?
Hi. Inter project is moving forward. We're working, have a pretty much conference call on Friday, working on the RFPs for infrastructure, network infrastructure, network management, data centers, and call handling equipment. For the RFPs, will be coming out later this month as RFPs. We hope to have responses back to those and have awards by July. We're moving pretty fast on the design and infrastructure. NextGen, is GIS remediation an important effort? Well, no. We're moving away from 911 network where caught it based on telephone numbers, and we're moving to a solution where calls are routed based on GIS data. More critical application of GIS data entry than this is going to be. So we have to make sure that our GIS data is wide, accurate, and up to the task for route calls to our PSAPs based on our data.
Great summary. I really appreciate that, Scott. Anybody have any questions that you want to ask Scott about the importance of the data remediation process? Why important? Okay, great. I just got to say I'm excited about this because I don't know of any other states that have tracked the ground that we're going across right now. I don't know if you do, Scott, but kind of on the front end of this whole effort?
I think definitely going to be one of the first. It's kind of a race to see who gets there first, but I don't have anybody that's actually writing calls off the GIS data yet. So we'll be one of the first when we can make that transition.
Yeah, thank you much, Scott. Okay, let me kind of an idea of how we view the remediation process and the timeline for that. I also want to add that you guys were kind of first out of the box, so we're kind of learning as we go. The entire team is very open to any suggestions you have. If you see something, or if we see something that doesn't make sense to you, we'd love to hear from you. Yes, we can, but we certainly don't have all the answers. So we appreciate you guys being first. We'll learn a lot from South Central region that we will apply to future regions. And in case you didn't already know that, Jessica and her team, they're already went into region number 2 and starting into region number 3. So trains left the station, and we're really going very quickly, but we always have time for improvement. Here's kind of the way the steps are. What I want to point out in the first 3 items is that there is an RFP on the street that Ken and his team have put together, and we're going to be receiving responses of that very quickly. It's been posted, and as you can see from item number 12 on your screen, that RFP is going to close out the week toward the end of this month, so it's really going very, very quickly. Ken's hope is that he'll be able to award a contract for the imagery no later than the middle of May. That's really important because we've heard from the vendors and you folks out in the regions that imagery or image is going to be very important for remediation. So we're working very, very hard to push that through so you'll have that to take advantage of. That's a little bit about the imagery effort that's running in parallel with the remediation effort. So up to item 4 on your screen. In our kickoff today, to give you a sense of what we're doing and what the next are going to be, and then Ben's going to a little bit later about a document that his team has put together. It's going to help you in the region with the reps of the counties and the vendors as well with remediation of data. He'll talk about that. That's a real important document. And that we're going to pull down allow you guys to pull down the analytical data and the reports associated with that, so that you'll be able to see all the hard work that has been taken place by AOS and what the next step is in terms of remediating that. So that'll be very soon. This week we'll be able to get through those milestones. And number 7 on here, if it's applicable, I put down if it's applicable, the PSAP may request vendors to do their bid and proposal. So you may elect to remediate your own data from the views that Scott sent out, the 4 options that as a PSAP you have. So if you are going to be asking a vendor to help you with remediation, then you will want to get with their fighters that we've listed as meeting our criteria. You can select one of those, or you may choose somebody else if you want, and there are conditions associated with all those, as you know. But we like, and we're hopeful that by April 18th, you will have reached out to whomever is going to help you with that remediation of data. What external or internal to your organization, we're hoping by the 18th that you will have done that. Then number 8, step number 8, if you will, the vendor will prepare a bid and proposal, including a project plan, and hoping that the various vendors will finish that by April 25th. Once they finish that, we're asking that a vendor please submit a copy of that to the PSAP and to Scott for approval, for review approval, and we're hoping that'll take place just shortly before the end of this month. Then near the end of this month, Scott will issue authorization to proceed after he has reviewed the bid and proposals for reasonableness. And once he authorizes that, then step number 11 is for me to issue what we call a work package, or some people call it a task order, and that allows the vendor to go ahead and start doing the work and collecting the costs associated with that. So you can see there's a lot that we're hoping is going to take place yet this month. Does he have any questions on the process or maybe the timeline? Does it look reasonable? Can you see if we missed anything? Do you think the schedule is too aggressive? Okay. Next, hold on just one second. Ken, can you want to talk a little bit about expectations for remediation?
Yeah, thank you, Randall. The slide here, and as Randall mentioned, the GIS subcommittee has been working on a document that we call the NG911 GIS Data Model and Remediation Guidance, version 1.0. The slide goes on to say that we're currently in draft version 0.4, so we're not quite to version 1.0 yet, but we're getting close. And the document is coming together very well, and we will bring that out to the central region for review here this week. It has been reviewed by AOS to make sure it fits, with their perspective, it fits the NENA GIS standards and what they're doing with the gap analysis and their QA methodologies. We're also providing it to Mission Critical Partners, which is the consulting firm that's helping with the infrastructure design that Randall mentioned. They have a GIS subject matter expert, so we're bringing him on board for some consulting time to also do a review to make sure that anything we put in there isn't way off in left field somewhere. But we also want it reviewed within this community as well by the remediation vendors and the counties and the PSAPs. So we're getting that out this week. The purpose of the document itself is to provide some clarity and consistency in how the NENA/Kansas GIS standard will be implemented. Once we kicked off this project, essentially in January of this year, we started receiving a fair number of questions from local government on how specific situations were to be handled when it came to road center lines or overlapping center lines along county boundaries and address points, and how you would handle address points in specific situations regarding structures or apartment complexes, duplexes, triplexes, and a variety of situations. And we decided that we needed to put together a document that could address all of those, and so would address just the data model itself, so it would all be contained in one place. So it doesn't override the NENA GIS standard, but it sort of complements that and addresses how it should be implemented, since the NENA standard provides some flexibility in how you might address add points and where they're placed. Since we bring this data together into a statewide database, we'd like to see some consistency. So the document is really meant to be an aid to make things easier, not only as the data is developed or remediated, but as the data is put together into a statewide database. We found a really good starting point in a similar document that came out of the Tennessee 911 program, and then made some pretty significant revisions and modifications to fit Kansas. And the subcommittee developed this. Sherry Massey out of Dickinson County, who's on our subcommittee, led the effort there, and I think between her efforts and the efforts of everyone on the GIS subcommittee, it came together really well. So as you all have a chance to look at it, you might see some things that you might like to change or that you have questions. I certainly want to hear from you regarding that. Again, our timeline is pretty quick on this, but our plan is to get this document out through Scott at distribution point, and along with that email, we'll have an established timeline for comments on that. The point here as it relates to remediation and expectations is that the document establishes the standards that are followed for the remediation process. So we need to get this thing nailed down. I think it's pretty close. Again, we've had a couple of rounds of review already, but there are some points that do need to be discussed. There is a bit of time for that still to happen. So we'll get that out this week. There's still methods for discussion via email or another conference call, but we'll also be discussing this at the meeting we have in the Region 2 in Garden City next week. So that's just the document, sort of the general timeline. But again, this is really a team effort, not meant to be a top-down approach, and is intended to make things easier for the data development and the aggregation process as we bring it all together. So, Randall, that's everything I had on that slide. Be happy to take any questions if you'd like me to.
Great, you Ken. Does anybody have any questions for Ken? This is a really effort document, and it sets the baseline for remediation, as Ken mentioned. So, if you have any questions, well, you haven't seen the document yet, but if you have any questions about the methodology, I think the important thing is it's been a collaborative effort, as Ken has pointed out. It's not to be top-down. It's trying to figure out what makes most sense for the PEPs, the county, and the state. So I think you're going to be pleased with it. Does anybody want to specifically ask Ken any questions about mediation standards baseline? Okay, great. Jess, do you want me to give the control back to you, or you want me to just step through the next few slides to talk a little bit about where's the GIS data and how do we get it?
I think maybe maybe we should have Ken.
Okay.
It's all coming fast.
Okay, Ken, do you want to address this one then?
I think we'll let Eileen take this one since she'll be handling this part of it.
Oh, great, thank you, Eileen.
GIS produced a geodatabase that contained the data that you submitted with the errors included in that geodatabase, and it's actually going to be housed here on the DASC FTP server. So once data is officially released, you'll receive an email from Scott, indicate it's ready for you to access, and with instructions on how to do that. And at that time, you can go to your folder and download the data. I probably will not include each county username and password in that email. I'd rather you contact me for that, just so it doesn't get spread around to anyone and everyone. Not that everyone on this project shouldn't get that probably, but that way I can have a primary contact for that information. If you don't use your username and password, once you get that email from Scott to officially go download your data, just let me know and I will send that out to you. And I think the timeline for that is some week that she released. Is that right, Randall?
I think so. I think that Scott, you're putting together instructions in the email, and they're going out pretty quickly, I think. So, and that's the first step, as you mentioned.
That's the hope, is that it will go out yet this week.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So you got two folks that you'll be working with there. Scott will kind of initiate the process. Once you get your email, you'll be working with Eileen to get your password and have your instructions from Scott. So we think that's going to work out really pretty good for all of you. Does he have any questions for Eileen about the repository of the data set? Okay. All right. Let's talk about these.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to give you a little bit more in-depth information on the gap analysis report that we'll receive. So we were asked originally to provide the report in Excel format, which we have delivered full. And then after we were, or before we were in the project, they asked everyone if they could provide the errors within the GIS data provided by the local jurisdictions. So because we won it, we did back and we put all of the errors inside of the individual data layers. So, for instance, your road centerline file will be the original one that you provide us in a database format with additional fields added to it. And so there'll be error for duplicates, be an error field for overlaps, there'll be an error field for gaps, etc. So you receive that data and you take a look at it, you can go directly into the table, select all of the features that have that type of error and be able to view it cartographically. Now, in order to accomplish that, we did provide this Excel spreadsheet. Showed this in Wichita when we had the meeting. I wanted to give you a little bit further information on it. So every county's error report is going to have several tabs, and I'll talk about the tabs more specifically in a moment. But let's go back to an overview tab, which is the very first tab in the Excel spreadsheet. What we did is we listed each error type plus the data layers that we looked at, what their NINA GIS data layer name would be, so we could crosswalk between the NINA standards and data we were provided by the local jurisdictions. And then on the right is the number of errors. So this example of this jurisdiction, there are no duplicate features. Their roads were clean, addresses, ESN boundaries, counties, cities. Those were all free of duplicate features. For duplicate features, we indicate all of the overlaps. Then we look at all of the gaps. We looked at overhangs on the roads, regionality inconsistency. This is where the street line address ranges are flowing a different direction than the actual of the road. We looked at the splits intersections. You'll see that if you have a fire district, you'll also have the fire district here, law enforcement, ES. This example is very limited on features because I didn't want to take up 10 different slides showing all of the screenshots. So go to the next slide, Randall, please. We also looked at incorrect ESNs, and that specifically we're looking for those within the address points and the road centerline file. You can see this example, there's 3 stars there. Any chance the jurisdiction does not have a field or has a field that is populated with ESN numbers, then we actually starred that and have you reference back to the actual tab inside the spreadsheet so that you can see specifically what that kind of error was. If you see the next one, it says ESN boundary misalignment. If you have fire, law enforcement, EMS, and an ESN boundary, we were able to run this error check. If you not, and in this case, this jurisdiction only had an ESN and didn't have any of the folder or the data layers that make up the ESN, we're unable to run it. So we put NA there for not applicable. Look at road name inconsistencies. This is where you have 2 road segments that are, or a road segment that's between other road segments that contain different names. So all of those are flagged. We also did NSAG synchronization. We took your match percentages. This example jurisdiction, the match percentage is very high. Typically what we're finding with our NSAG synchronization is nowhere close to 91%. We everywhere from 91% high all the way to 0% in a couple of jurisdictions. Looked at the telephone number listings, and we geocoded those against the access points. My computer just went to sleep. What you'll find is the total number of geocodable telephone number addresses, and we tell you how many matched at 0% or there was no match, how matched at less than 90%. Some jurisdictions will have great equal to or greater than 90, so between 90 and 100% or 99%. Some jurisdictions, you'll see that in your report, and then we also tell you how many matched at 100%. That we let know is what missing need GIS data layers do you have. And you can see that this jurisdiction, as example, has a lot of data layers missing. So these data layers are all going to be reflected in the documents that the state is putting together for the remediation guidance. Randall, would you go to the next page for me? We want to tell you how many non-NENA fields are within your data, and then how many missing NENA fields are there. Now, in the roll-up or the overview tab, we don't tell you specifically that there was 10 mandatory fields that were missing and 3 additional fields and the optional fields. We don't go into that detail. That detail will actually be in one of the tabs, and you can specifically look at your fields compared to the NENA fields. In that tab, tell you what the field types are in your data, what the field types are supposed to be in the NENA data. We also tell you the links. Links. That's hard to say. And that's all in a tab called Jurisdictional versus NENA Fields. We also geocoded your address points against your street centerline tile, and this is more typical of what you'll see from jurisdictions. Total match, how were less than 90, how many were between 90 and 99, and then how many hit 100%. So geocoded the CAMA addresses to the address points. Data has been kind of interesting for us to process because some jurisdictions don't put in cities, some don't put in cities and zip codes, some jurisdictions put in zip codes but no cities, and so it's been kind of interesting to geocode these. So you'll get the same kind of results there on the percentages that were unmatched, less than the 90 to 90 and then 100%. The next slide, I think that's the last one on the overview. We tell you what kind of multi-address structure form you have. We probably didn't need to tell you, but for our purposes, we needed to know that. We also looked at U.S. Postal Service abbreviation standardization, and you can see here that this is also a starred field. Some jurisdictions didn't have a separate field for that. There was just a variety of things. Pre-directionals, we checked that, post-directionals, and then we just say what kind of, or what the section is for all of the data layers that were provided. So look at the metadata, and the metadata is in a separate folder. You'll see that when you get a chance to look at your data, that we actually do provide the metadata back to you. So I would be happy to answer any questions on the overview. I want to just quickly cover the tabs next, but are there any questions on the overview?
Okay. Sarah Lynn, just to clarify, there are some instances where it might show that, well, for instance, one entry may have multiple, may fall under multiple error codes, correct? Like if the address range didn't fall within or the street type didn't match. So in cases if one S or one MSAG or one, street segment cleaned up, it can clean up multiple.
Yes, absolutely. And some of them, what we saw in some of the cities is, and you guys, or some of the counties, you guys know better than we do if you've touched it. The MSAGs, they don't always follow the standardized U.S. Postal Service abbreviations. So instead of using AVE like the post office says, they've used AV. And so there are a lot of those things, but yeah, Sarah Lynn, you're correct. If you just change like one thing, it would clean multiple errors up.
Right, but it is important to look at all fields because by personal experience, there have been times when we would find one error and think, that's it, fix it, and then the next time around it falls out and we realized, oh, there was actually two things wrong with it, but we only looked at one.
Yep, absolutely. Now what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about the tabs. So these are the tabs in order when you get the spreadsheet. The first one will be the overview, and that's what I just showed you. The next tab will be the data crosswalk. This is information on your layers, and it crosswalks to the side of the NINA standards. And we actually list all of the possible NINA data layers there that you can see your data compares to the complete listing. Some jurisdictions are going to have notes, and jurisdictions aren't. There were things that as we were running the data we caught, but it wasn't necessarily a check that we ran. It just happened to be we were looking at one thing and came upon another one. A prime example is we found a jurisdiction that has multiple street center line files that are topographically different, all running in a line, but they all have the exact same address ranges. So the road, let's just say called Jayhawk Road, the first center line file said 1,000 to 1,099. The next one, same, 1,000 to 199. The next one, same thing. So if we saw those kind of things, we actually made a note of it as we were going through the data. Tab shows you your geocoding match, all of the less than 100% matches for your CAMA data. The following tab talks about your jurisdictional versus your NINA fields. This one is the duplicate features. So all of the duplicate features for each of the data layers that we run the check on are listed. You have 2 street center line files that are duplicates, and then you have 15 address points that are duplicates. They're all on that same spreadsheet. We have a tab for mapping features, then with the gaps, overhangs, look at road directionality inconsistencies. There's a specific tab for that, and it says like it's running into segment whatever it is. And so all of these tabs have the object ID for object within your data that we provide back to you. We looked at splits at the sections. So I told you if for some reason the road segment crossed fire district boundary but it wasn't split there, and we told you that it was a split that needed to occur due to the fire district boundary, for instance. So, like I said, looked at correct ESNs. And with you, ESNs were a bit of a challenge for us. AT&T have moved from 3-digit ESNs to 4-digit ESNs. Some of the data, GIS data reflects the 4-digit ESN, but most of the GIS data is reflecting the 3-digit ESN. So we'd have had to do a crosswalk to figure out what those were. But just be aware that AT&T have made that change, or is in the process of making that change across the state. So I need to be cognizant that might be something that we need to make sure is correct. Look at how well the ESN boundaries align to fire districts, EMS, and law enforcement. And then there was other data layers. We did look at those. And basically that's, a fire district is supposed to be contained multiple ESNs, for example. But if for some reason a little bit of the fire station or the fire boundary was shaved off and in a different ESN, then we noted that for you all. Inconsistencies and synchronization errors. We didn't tell you every single errors that occur in the MSAG synchronization. We kind of gave you an idea. We gave you 10 randomly sampled MSAG errors so that you could look. It's enough to, oh, I understand why my MSAGs and my street centerline files aren't updating. Jurisdictions are using actual address ranges where your MSAGs use theoretical address ranges. So they seem to be cause of some higher amount of errors in the MSAGs. We have telephone number listing or Reali database, kind of like the CAMA data. The abbreviations were correct, sometimes they weren't. Just a whole variety of standardization. You know, looking back, if everybody would have standardized their addresses in a certain way for the whole jurisdiction, many of these errors would have been remediated in the past. We knew what your geocode of your address points to your centerline is. Like we talk about what's your multi-address structure format. We tell you all of the U.S. Postal Service abbreviation errors are. Investing, there's some abbreviations that popped up for us that we're not even really sure what kind of abbreviations they are. I can't tell you one off the top of my head, but there are a few in a couple jurisdictions that we'd never seen the abbreviation before. There seemed to be a problem for abbreviations too. We looked, like I said, at pre-directionals and post-directionals if they existed. We talked about what the projection type is for each of the GIS layers, and then we give you the metadata. Questions on the tabs. And if your gap analysis report and you don't understand something, please don't hesitate to ask. We're happy to answer any kind of questions that you have so that you understand what information is that we gave back to you.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Anybody have any questions for Jessica concerning the gap analysis report, or maybe the tabs associated with it?
Randall, this is John Rogers. I was wondering, Jessica, do you plan on, when these are available to a PSAP, are you planning on any kind of a formal explanation, let's look at your report together kind of thing, or are we to, if we have any issues, do we just simply get a hold of you?
Well, we talked about the first one on. I mean, what's the thought? I mean, be happy to explain to whoever might need it. Specifically, those jurisdictions, they may not have GIS people within their jurisdiction. That's helpful. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I was just wondering if you had planned getting together with each PSAP and formally going over the report with them, and if not, then we're just we would contact you as we saw fit to get any explanation that we needed. Just trying to find out what your plans were for this.
We hadn't talked about it, but Ken, Scott, Randall, you guys are the ones that are in charge.
I think that what I would recommend, and I'll let Scott and Ken weigh in, but what I recommend, John, is that the jurisdiction or the vendor, remediation vendor, if it's applicable, first go through the report and kind of peruse it and try to understand the best you can. And if it's not obvious what the content are, then to get a hold of Jessica and address it that way. We planned an individual kickoff meeting with each jurisdiction to step through the individual data.
Okay.
Scott, do you comment, Scott or Ken?
Agree with what you said, Randall.
I agree with that as well. If it needs to be addressed on an individual county basis, then that'd be the way to do it.
Do you think it'll work for you, John?
Sure. Just need to know which route to go.
A great question. Let's try it out, and we would love to hear back from you once you've tried that approach. Let us know if it worked or didn't work, and how we might improve it. Let's try it that way for the time being.
Will do.
Thank you, John. How about other questions for Jessica about the gap analysis report, the tabs associated with it? Okay, great. This is an important slide for you. Who are you going to call? Any questions? And we kind of talked about this just now with John's question, but if you have questions about the data or the report, I'm going to ask you to call Jessica Fry at AOS directly, and she'll be you through that and resolve it. If you have difficulty accessing the Ask FTP, and you're after Scott sends you the instructions, then get in touch with Eileen Battles if you would, and she'll help you with that. If you have concerns about the remediation of the data, particularly as it ties into the baseline document that Ken talked about a little bit earlier afternoon, then call Ken. There's his phone number there. For the bid and proposal effort, if you have questions about the BNP, we'd like to call Scott Eckberg directly, and he'll help solve any questions you have with that. We'll point out that our expectation is that with bid and proposal, we're also looking for a project plan. That means that there should be a timeline there of how long you estimate it's going to take to remediate the data, who's going to be doing that, and that sort of. We've talked about that a couple of different times, but it's just not just a cost estimate, but it also includes a project plan. So if you have questions about that, Scott will be glad to help you with it. And as I mentioned earlier, the real trigger is the work package for allowing folks to go on and do great things. So that will come from me, and there'll be, and if you have questions, that's primarily for the remediation vendors. If you have questions about that, give me a call, and we'll figure out how that works and what we need to do with that. If all fails, if you have a question that doesn't seem to be on this list and you're not sure who to call, Scott Eckberg is a great resource. He's the liaison, 911 liaison. He's the guy that works with you on a daily or weekly basis. So free to call Scott anytime, and he's got the answer to everything I've ever asked him.
So a lot of stuff out.
Well, you're doing pretty good. It always works for me when I ask you a question. Well, I promised to go through the action items to kind of let you know what our expectations are. We need help from folks on this call, and I want to talk about that. The most important one, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the call, you got first out of the box, looking for ways of doing things better. And we think we have a pretty good methodology, but there's room for improvement. So we really encourage you on these calls or emails or whatever, if something can be done better and differently, we want to encourage you to do this. But we have to succeed together or we'll fail apart, one or the other. So we just want to encourage you to share your ideas. The thing is, as Ken mentioned, he has a baseline document that that's going to be sent out to the remediation vendors a little bit later this week, no later than early next week. And that's going to be the benchmark. That's the baseline for remediation. So that's a real important document for folks to go through and to return with your comments. there may be something that we missed or can be done differently. So we'll look forward to hearing from you on that one. Actually going in and pulling on your report and the data. Going to be sending that out very soon, perhaps by the end of this week, early next week. So we'll encourage you to go in there and try to make that happen. And if it turns out you're having difficulty with it once you've received your instructions, you can always give Eileen a call and she'll help you with that. So to do that, and hopefully you'll be able to do that next week at the latest, just to make sure you can get in and take a look at it. We're hopeful that the bid and proposals requested by counties later than April 18th. It's going to take them a while, the vendors a while, to put together their bid and proposal. So the sooner we can ask them to do that, then the better it is. And as I mentioned, we're hoping that by the end of the month we'll have all the bid and proposals in for all those jurisdictions that plan to request remediation from external vendors. That's on our list. Questions about next steps, the action items that we hope will take place this month yet? Okay. Do you find these sessions, are they helpful? We're trying diligently to communicate frequently and currently with everybody in the interest of collaboration. Is this helpful? Do you like these, or that maybe we're doing it too frequently? Maybe we're not doing it enough. What do you think?
On these timelines, so you're saying that we're supposed to review the report, contact the vendor within 2 days? That's the expectation?
Is if you're going to be getting from outside, what we'd like you to do is, first we'd like to take a look at your data. And you can get in and see it and all that. But at the same time, we're asking you that you reach out to one of the vendors that, or more than a single vendor. You may want to reach out to multiple vendors. We're asking you to reach out to them so that they know that you're interested in working with them. In a lot of cases, some of you folks have been working with the remediation vendors. You already have a relationship with them, so you know that you probably even have to go through that step. You've already set it up. You have not had an opportunity to do that. So what we're encouraging you to do is to reach out and contact the vendor, so know that you're interested in talking to them if they haven't already. That sounds something like something that's reasonable or not?
It depends on when we get the report, because 2 days from now is Saturday.
Actually, about 7 days built into the timeline to your analysis report on the 11th, which I believe is Friday. Would you have been until the 18th to contact your vendor?
She's probably the same thing I'm thinking. A week to look at the data, try to figure it out, and see, do we want to do this ourselves, or do we want to use a vendor, and then to get that information. A week seems pretty tight.
I understand that concern. You know, these are not hardcore dates. We're just trying to get a sense of what's realistic. So what I'm hearing is most of you would like more time to review the data before you approach a vendor for help.
Yes.
The consensus then that 1 week is just not enough. How much do you need? even done it yet, what kind of feels right to you?
I don't think, this is John, I think it depends on the county and the number of errors that you're going to have to, or report, the in-depth report, really what you're going to have to deal with. It could be different for any county.
That sense. Is there a range in there somewhere, like it could have 2 weeks or 4 weeks kind of thing, or we just don't know yet?
Mark, I don't think until we actually see some of the counties are looking at, I don't think we can come up with any hard timeline to figure out how much time they're going to need to review it, let alone just from a vendor end.
Mark?
Rams can, other than, I think we need to push that back at 1 week too tight, but we need to set some sort of timeline to keep this on track. So I don't know what that answer is, but we keep that process moving. So there, no, vary by county, but what's the consensus out there? 1 week's obviously tight, 2 weeks might not be enough, but is there a date I think we can hit? And I think we can be flexible on case to case where things just extenuating circumstances come up, but as these things get out, there is the need to without us moving through the system so the remediation activity can begin.
I'll bet 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Okay. Well, kind of, I'll go back and rework some of these dates then, and kind of use 3 weeks as. See, the thing is, and Scott explained this at the beginning of the call. GIS is crucial to NG911. So we don't want it to go to sleep. We have to move forward on it. We don't want to go so fast that we don't do it well and we don't do it right. So there's a fine line there, and we're going to have to kind of grope and explore and discover what that looks like. And it's to me that it's going to be a county by county basis. That feels to me. So why kind of target 3 weeks, knowing that it could be as simple as 2 weeks, it might be more complicated, maybe 4 weeks. That kind of get a sense of what the front end process is like. And our expectation is that once we do see the bid and proposal, which is going to involve the remediation of data, we're going to be looking for a timeline in that from whether it's internal or external. We really need a sense of how long is it going to take to get the data fixed, so that once the GIS database is, the integrity has been validated, as Scott mentioned, we've got to start hooking it into the infrastructure, and Ken's going to take a lead role on that. So that's why that we're kind of interested in what the timeline looks like. So that's great feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that, all three of you who were concerned about that. Does that sound like a good plan then? 2 to 4 weeks with a target of 3 weeks?
Yes.
Great. Any other questions from anybody on anything that we've covered? Okay, so much for some of your valuable time. We know that you're all busy with a lot of other things that is important. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Jessica, for arranging the WEX, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon, okay? All right, care.
See you, Randall.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you later.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.